They just keep on going, and there's no stopping them. It's insane. Mark Whitfield, it is. Crazy guitar player, really one of my favorites feel wise, from the modern jazz guitar players. Talk about really strong feeling, um, going 100% in. Don't be afraid of mistakes, man. It's crazy, and also crazy band. This is not the live video actually that it was playing now. The one was this one. From Keystone Corner, Baltimore. I'm not from the USA, so I have no idea, but it sounds very jazz. And it's like, I guess, like a typical jazz club thing. And yeah, as I said before, I really like to check out live videos from musicians to really see how they think and to get like a better idea of how these things work. So I think a lot of people are subscribed to this channel from Emmett Cohen. It's one of the best jazz YouTube places to be at. And yeah, it's really cool to see the differences from different live versions and see, like, for example, on Emmett Cohen, it's usually like they're invited and they just come and play like guest artists. But he actually brought the same band from here, 7th of July, to here on the 31st of July. So that's something to think about, you know. It's really, really good players. Yeah, I heard this and I was just, I got so inspired to check out this tune from Willow Weep For Me. It's called 3/4, and yeah, we can get a listen to this one. Really cool. Oh, you cannot hear. Oh man. Wait, how come? I guess now you can hear it. I've never been to the States yet. Wait a minute. See this guy's face? That's when you know you're jazzing. Look at this guy. Wait a second. Look at this guy. Yeah, man. He just doesn't stop. He doesn't care. Oh wait, he actually stopped now. Just as I said it. I mean, great timing. I found guitarist, it's Mr. Clean. Man, this guy is dirty as hell. It's insane. Nice. Can you even call yourself a jazzer without a hat that says jazz on it? No, I don't think so. I think that's why they make those hats, so that you can tell. Like, otherwise, how do you know what they play, man? You have to know. I do have to check what's going on here with the audio, so I'll put something else while I'm trying to figure out better audio for me, because I cannot hear it very well. 1 second. Ah, that's better. You guys can still hear this? Gonna get censored. Think now should be better, the sound. I think. No? At least I hope so. I think. This is a bit too much. Yeah. Yep. Okay, well, we're not going to need too much of the sound, because we're going to actually go through some cool things, like the JAZZ Iceberg. Yeah, I think now the mic should be fine. I think I fixed it. Yeah, so here are, the first thing is some comments that you guys left. Better, I think. Should be better now. Um, yeah, I mean, if the audio is not good or anything, just let me know. I'm trying to figure it out here. Last week I did the first time and it went fine, but now suddenly there was something weird. But yeah, it should be fine now. And if not, just imagine. Um, I'm here for the Strat 8. Man, you have no idea. Test. Aha. I think I know. If I put this higher. I think now it should be better. I think it's almost clashing. What's happening is... oh, no, it's too loud. Oh. Man, this is just... It's just like jazz. You know, you just improvise. Yeah. I think now I am back. At least according to the numbers here. That's not a bandoline, actually. That's a Portuguese guitar. It sounds terrible. I can... no, it's quite late here. If I make a lot of noise with it, it's gonna wake up everyone in my street, but I can show you. So it's just it's called a Portuguese guitar. It's a 12 string. Each string is doubled, and it's used in Portuguese music. Yeah. And it does look like a bandolin though, and it sounds a bit like a bandolin, but with more low. Yeah, it's based also like it's a curved back, just like the old violins in cello. So it's come from the Baroque tradition, and you actually play it with this technique where you only use your index finger, and you kind of do like this. And I've used that idea for some things. Let's see if the guitar is not too loud. So that yeah, maybe I'll, it's actually, oh man, what was the tuning? I think, if I remember correctly, it's C, G, A, D, G, A. So it's it has a fifth and then a second, and then it has from the A goes to D, and then there a fourth and then a second. So it's also, it sounds super cool if you just play it like this, also open. So it's more like viola caipira we have here in Brazil. Could be like, there's a lot of things from Brazil that I don't know about, like the typical guitars. There's so many different things. But of course, like Portuguese influence in Brazil, especially with the guitars and different types of guitars, is undeniable. Yeah, you also have like the famous ukulele that comes from Portugal, that got brought to many different countries. That's very famous, ukulele. But you also have the cavaquinho. Cavaquinho is also derived from one of the northern part areas in Portugal. So Portugal has like many different types of guitars. Yeah. Yeah, that was it. But funny, like no one ever, I think, well, maybe there were like sometimes some comments about people asking what the hell is that, or are you going to play that? I think I played some when I got it, like I did get lessons on it and everything, but to really get good on it, you have to dedicate yourself to it. And I don't want to do like 50 or divide myself too much, because I already play a lot of different styles. I play jazz guitar. I can also play Brazilian music, bossa nova, samba, and I play fado music, so Portuguese music. So it's already very wide. So if now I'm going to dedicate myself to a total different type of playing, it's too much, and also completely different tuning. And it's never going to be as good as someone who does it all the time. But it did help me, the things that I learned. And one of the cool things that you can get from that technique is that you can get some type of muted rhythm stuff if you get the hang of it, like you're strumming. You're like strumming it, and then you can also strum with your fingers. Some Brazilian guitar players do this. That you have like a typical wait, now I'm doing it already. Wait. So there should be no ghost notes. It should be like all completely legato, like a So one of the things that there would be like a basic, or if you play like in swing time, that you play like. That would be like a basic type of playing for your right hand. But if you use this technique of that thing, then you can do like all these different types of muted things, like really cool rhythmic things with it. So instead of using only the index finger like a Portuguese guitar player would do, I hold the pick here on the index finger, and I use my thumb and my middle finger as kind of like alternating thing. And then you can get like this sounds, like a... like this type of things. That's actually a lot of guitar players have their nowadays also do in their own way. Also for jazz, that you do like. That's like once you get the hang of it, it's very natural to do, and it's kind of like those funky things that you do with a pick, like if you're strumming. But then with this, like this type of things, you know. And I got that idea from doing that on the Portuguese guitar with the index finger, where they hit the string and they hold it on the thumb, so you get like this type of catapult. And that idea developed into that. So I did get something out of it. That idea of fingerstyle developing a flow, a rhythmic flow out of just using your fingerstyle, not only with the pick. So that's a good benefit in the end. Yeah, so Portuguese guitar, you only use index, yes. Treat a guitar like a pandeiro, exactly. Yeah, I haven't ever checked out the viola caipira, actually. Maybe it would be nice. I'll have to check a listen. Like, if you have any artists from viola caipira that you recommend, let me know. Got to try that on the baritone. Yeah, do you play baritone guitar? Like that guy that plays with Cory Wong, Mark Whitfield or something? He plays it, but very, very much with pick, but for sure you can also do this. Like, once you start to hear how this works, then yeah, it you start hearing it in many different places. But yeah, I'm gonna go through a couple of comments. Yes, all flats. (80-20). Does that mean like you mean the tuning or the string thickness? That's very thick. 80-20 strings. Request: a jam with a samba, tango, lambada type dancer. Both of you improvise, you play to her dancing, she dances to your playing. Man, it's like That would be the most crazy video possible. uh, yeah, I mean, I can try. Do you have like any recommendations? I do know like a friend of mine has a project. She plays with also dancers, and it's very cool, very popular also. But I'm not a choreographer, so it would have to be someone that can improvise on it, or someone that can also compose dance, and that we then do something. And I improvise, and she doesn't, or yeah. But to do samba, tango, lambada, or I guess you mean more like a Latin type of thing. Yeah, it would be cool. I love dance. That's also a cool thing. Like if you're a musician, one of the best hobbies that you can have is dancing, to develop like natural type of rhythm, to feel like the movements that you do and these things. We just saw like Mark Whitfield. He's not standing still. He's moving a lot. And it's good that if you learn how to dance, that you learn how to control your body instead of like making unwanted movements and this. So I did sign up for like classes to learn dancing and salsa dancing, especially in like 2 years ago, 1 year ago with Corona. And it's something like if you have a girlfriend, a wife, or a partner, or friends, it's just something that nice that you can do. It's social, and it's a great thing that you can do outside of your instrument that does develop your musicianship. Dancing is great. If you also look at past traditions, dance music is really connected. You see it in Brazil, like people dance and play music together. It's not separate. Also the musicians. John Patitucci said he tells all his students to learn a percussion instrument to nail the rhythm. Yeah, that's great. Like you, especially like you can also hear musicians that treat their instruments like a percussion instrument. That you really, it's like everyone's playing drums, and you just have to hit the right notes. That's something that Jesse van Ruller also said. Like the notes, they're fine, or the notes are gonna be fine. You don't have like at a certain point you know which notes you want to hit. The most important thing is the rhythm, the feel, phrasing, how you time things against each other with bandmates. There's so much there that you can develop. I also can play congas, kinda. I had to learn on the conservatory to learn like a secondary instrument for a year, and I did classical guitar, and I did for 2 years I did also classical guitar as secondary, and then I chose another one on top of that, and I chose congas. You have also this guitar player, Herb Hellis, famous jazz guitar player, and he plays congas. Yeah, okay, maybe it doesn't say here, but I know for a fact that he plays on some records. He plays a solo, or he plays the team, and then someone else solos. He's playing congas, playing rhythm. Yeah, well, it's always like a good thing to learn like percussion, dance, learn more about rhythm and what happens when you do rhythm or move rhythmically. congas on guitar like Tol Farlow. That's also a really cool video that I've seen, like where he plays with the Brad Norvo trio without drums, and then after he's solo, he does the conga thing on the neck. It's really cool. But no, I mean like literal congas, not on the guitar, outside of the guitar. Yeah, some really cool people here. Know a lot. Nice. Sally Lambert, sorry. Yes, there are people with the... Oh yeah, this is on the video from the stream that I did last week when I said something about getting better. There are people with a ear for music who pick up an instrument, learn the fingering, and without music play very well. I play the flute and it doesn't come easy for me. I understand, practice, practice, practice. It's the love of music that we continue to play. Your music is very nice, I enjoy it. Thank you. Very true. I think it's per person that you have to see how it works for you to find your own way to work through these things. It's definitely a personal journey. Enjoy the ride. Carlos, but I've been inspired by your thoughts and playing. I did practice too much and hurt it myself. I'm sorry to hear that. It's important to push yourself in a reasonable sense and to keep your development balanced. So if you go to the gym and suddenly you start working out like a mad person, you're going to get injured. Motivation, usually an inspiration, that lasts for 1 day, maybe 2 days. But the problem is with music and with getting fit or learning a language is you're not going to learn it in a week. You have to do this constantly. So it's much better to balance things out and keep it even. So I gave you an answer like that, and I'm just going to say, get good. No, I'm not going to say that. Yeah, how can I say what I should say? A personal journey that you share with your neighbors, whether they want to or not. I practiced too much and hurt it myself. Sucks to hear. Recovery time is just as important. Challenge balanced. TP Ben Monder, my one and only love. Yeah, that's I actually know that version of him, where he plays the intro with the harmonics and these things. Yeah, there's also a video with the transcription from this. It's a really cool tune. Definitely recommend everyone to check out. Just a standard by itself, My One and Only Love, is one of the most beautiful ballads. And yeah, Ben Monder has a great version on guitar on it. Yeah. So, five things I hate about a Strat. I can't have folks attacking the tele, so here's the counter offense. 5 things I dislike about a Stratocaster. How could you dislike a Stratocaster? What happened? Paul Davids, what happened? And now I need to put it... Hey man, do you use an equalizer? Oh, 1 second. Naka asks, hey man, do you use an equalizer to get that thick tone with the Strat? Well, I do. I use the lower pickup with the most bass, and I use I tone the tone down, but I don't use a equalizer pedal for it. Yeah, it would be cool if this worked, but maybe not. I don't think you guys can hear it. No. Yeah, I think it has to be postponed until I can figure out why the why the audio is not coming through over there. Sucks. Well, I mean, we can watch it next time. Too bad. Because this was working before. Yeah, I have to figure out what's the problem here next time. Right now, we can go to something else. The iceberg. Who here knows what an iceberg is? You've probably seen some of these before. The JAZZ iceberg. So an iceberg is indeed a big ice cube. There's this iceberg meme where you can see, it's usually you have a subject and then you go down, and the further down you go, the more obscure it gets into incredibly unknown things that no one ever heard about from jazz. I, of course, know everything, so it'll be easy. The top layer is, of course, the basics, the most easy, imaginable things. Starting with the basic, the first one, Louis Armstrong, right here. This is the basic iceberg, the part that you see. Louis Armstrong, right here. Who knows who Louis Armstrong is? Of course, Louis Armstrong, world famous. Hello, Dolly. What a wonderful world. It's, yeah, if you don't know Louis Armstrong, I mean, as a musician, you have to get started somewhere. Usually people that are not really into jazz, they think of the New Orleans type of jazz, where you improvise together, where you do like this counter things. Louis Armstrong, great singer, lots of records with Ella Fitzgerald. He's the face of jazz. I think he was like the Justin Bieber of the 20s, 30s. He was everywhere. So yeah, Louis Armstrong, great place to start. So What is, of course, the Miles Davis tune, where you have, D minor for a whole bunch of time. Everyone has to know that if you go to jazz, if you want to play jazz, if you want to play jazz with people, you have to know So What. And a great Miles Davis solo there to check out. So What. I think it's maybe, if you want to get started on jazz, it's like the easiest and coolest thing that you can learn, especially on guitar. If you just do like, then you already sound cool, and you can just move that around and just go crazy. It's like a shortcut into jazz. So Louis Armstrong, So What, they're next to each other, but they are in different time zones, time-wise, of our timeline of our lives. As in, Louis Armstrong, of course, was very popular in the 20s, 10s, in the band of King Oliver. So what came later with another trumpet player, Miles Davis. And I believe So What was in the end of the 50s, before the 60s. John Coltrane, who played also in the original recording of So What. John Coltrane, of course, one of the most, if not the most famous jazz saxophone player. Giant steps. He brings the nightmares to everyone. He's a huge practice freak. You have to know him. Many different phases. He played with a lot of records of Miles Davis, Steaming, Cooking. I don't know by heart if he played on all of them, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was in all those bands. He played live with Miles Davis a lot. He recommended Wayne Shorter to Miles Davis, so he was responsible for organizing part of the band of the famous Miles Davis quintet that did like all those other recordings that were more open, because he wanted to do his own thing. So he was always, it's like one of my biggest examples, John Coltrane. But yeah, he is on the top because he was very popular. Like you had, I think with My Favorite Things was when his record when he became a huge star. And John Coltrane, one of the greats ever. Jazz is dead. I don't know exactly who started with this phrase, but it is let me see. Jazz is dead. That's where the famous saying of people that are so pessimist that no one listens to jazz nowadays anymore. No one, you don't hear jazz on the radio. You don't hear jazz on TV necessarily, unless it is about the Second World War or about things that happened a long time ago. So it is a famous, popular statement to make. I can look up quickly. There's even a website, jazzisdead.com. It's a record label. Wait. It's a hip-hop jazz. What? It's a song? And it's a cover band from Grateful. Now, they've taken it too far now. Who came up with this? Jazz is dead. Who said jazz dead? When I asked Brian Kane, a professor in the Department of Music at Yale College, he said, "Jazz is dead if one thinks about a certain set of narrow conventions to define it. If it has to look like jazz of the past, jazz is dead. I believe this is the root of popular belief that jazz is dead." From the Yale Daily News. So, I mean, you can say this about jazz, but you can also say this about a lot of different music styles. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're dead. It's just more the popular belief. Soul is also an important part of jazz. I mean, of course, like Aretha Franklin. This is a famous soul jazz. Was very popular in the 60s, together with Bossa Nova. Ella Fitzgerald. Everyone knows Ella Fitzgerald. Sang together with Louis Armstrong on that famous CD. This is basics. Basics. You have to know this. The best, well, not the best, but the defining scat singer on standards. If you want to look up how to scat, you have to check Ella Fitzgerald. And you can also check Louis Armstrong. But he has a very different way than Ella Fitzgerald. Ella did treat scatting more as an instrument, as an instrumentalist than Louis Armstrong. 251, who knows, who could forget the famous, the hit, oh, I messed up the 251. I'll try again. Wait. Does that sound like a 251? I think that is just 251. You know, it's the backbone of all jazz. It's what most songs are all derived from in the real book. It doesn't necessarily mean that there were 251s everywhere. I think if you know about music theory, then you know that a 1 can be followed by a 5, and a 5 can be followed by a 2. So I think jazz musicians, if they wanted to have a 5 somewhere on a melody because they thought it was nice, then you just put a 5. And if you put a 5, then you might as well put a 2 to get more movement. So sometimes 4 bars of 1 would become 251, 251 in 4 bars. Because, you know, just to get more movement in it. And that's why you hear it so much. And then just by having that sound of getting harmonic movement on something that could be more static from the older times, then you can mess around with these things that you expect, and then you get all these different 251s that we know today. There's many variations, also like which type of 1, where does the 251 go to, or is it the 1 real, the original 1, or is it another 251, or is it like how do you say, a sequence of 251s where you have, so you can have a song that's like, you can rhythm changes, you can have rhythm changes where it's just like where it's just the 1 and the 5. You can even have rhythm changes where it's just the 1. And then you can add a 5. And then you can add a 2 before that. And that's how, and then you can add like a 2-5 chromatically in front of that other 2-5. You know? Like this type of things. And sometimes you just have like this. And your lines can imply a 2-5-1. Well, whatever. Just it's the backbone of jazz harmony. It's the thing that makes movement in a typical jazz harmony, and especially when it goes so fast during bebop, it was very handy to have it, because it's just the best way to have harmonic movement while still staying on the same key without having to modulate or without having to think about 6s and 4s and going to the 4th degree. It's just a super handy tool to make that sound. And it also sounds great on the bass. You have like that 4th thing, movement. It's just great. Nothing wrong with 2-5-1s, nothing to be ashamed about. Ragtime, that comes before Louis Armstrong. Scott Joplin, I believe. Yeah, very piano orientated. There were also piano players who took the stride type of playing from that piano, and you can hear still like Monk, for example, using this type of thing, and it's really cool. You can also do it on guitar, like a. Like this type of things. Of course, it doesn't have the sound of the piano. But very different instruments can imitate this sound. You also have sometimes lower brass instruments, saxophone, trumpet, trombone, where they imitate this sound also in some arrangements or from big band stuff, some hits. So it's definitely, you hear this idea a lot from the stride piano in ragtime. Of course, it goes much more deeper than just the stride piano. You have types of compositions. It's much more, still much more classical influenced. Yeah, but definitely worth checking out. And sometimes you think that it's old, but the things that you hear, like the maple leaf rag, it sounds insanely modern. Very syncopated, super rhythmic. It's definitely a really cool genre to check out. Duke Ellington, big band leader, everyone knows. Standards, each standard from Duke Ellington, who actually a lot of standards from him were also written by Billy Strayhorn, or by, I believe, Caravan was written by his trombone player. I don't remember now the name. He wrote Caravan and Perdido, I think, also. But he was a great leader. He also had, he had a lot of celebrity status during the big band era in the 30s, and was a very good leader, very charismatic. And later on, he also had a small post big band era where he played more like bebop, or his version or his way of playing more free. You have this really cool album with him and Charles Mingus, and I believe Max Roach, Jungle Money or something, where he plays I think it was in the 60s, and he plays really well, and very open, very different type of style, and it makes you a bit think. You can see that he checked out Monk, so he was not someone that was so proud that he would not check people that came after him to learn new things. He's definitely someone that was always looking forward, always mixing things, always trying things. He also, of course, played with John Coltrane, Duke Ellington and John Coltrane. Great album, great duo album with, of course, the band from Coltrane, except McCoy Tyner. Yeah, so excellent artist. I have a question. Whenever you transcribe phrases from other players, how do you go about doing it? Maybe it's because I don't have much vocabulary, but I end up tending to repeat phrases a lot throughout tunes. There's nothing wrong with learning phrases a lot throughout tunes. It's actually good. So when you say how do you go about doing it, you have different steps. So first is how do you choose? And so you have to, there's something that you catches your ears, and then since if you're still trying to build vocabulary, I believe that by inserting things, so you can have a section where you improvise, and then you add some vocabulary that you transcribed, and then force it into it, and at a certain point it will become part of you, of your playing automatically. Just like do it a lot, try it out in different places on the guitar or on your instrument, and the more you do it, the more you play around with it, you change it, you modify it, and that's how you build your own vocabulary from things that you like from other people. just like Duke Ellington did. For sure, like crazy to think about it, but yeah, for sure, Duke Ellington transcribed Monk, believe it or not. I'm sure of it. Swing. What does swing mean? Who knows? Swing can mean the style, jazz swing, big band era, or more the small combos that came from big bands. It can be about the feel, the jazz feel, the swing feel, which is a very complicated topic. You have different types of swing feel that comes from different types of different times in jazz. So it can go very deep. It can go lower around here. Maybe it'll pop up later. Miles Davis, we already talked about him. Miles Davis is progress in jazz. He reinvented the style multiple times. He brought great genius in bringing players. He transcribed a lot of singers, Frank Sinatra, for example. And he, like quarter note timing, his way of playing, his way of making it sound dirty, sloppy, just like we listened before with Mark Whitfield. It's like, make it really visceral, really human, actually, and not relying so much on chops, but not that he did not have chops, because he was classical, he educated in classical trumpet, and he knew how to play. Just listen to 7 Steps to Heaven. Like, if he wants to burn, he can play 8 notes in any tempo, no problem. It's just that he has a very different type of interaction things that he's looking for, or different type of approach to improvisation than a Freddie Hubbard, for example. Blues scale. Who doesn't know the blues scale? Very popular also in the bebop, post-bebop, like the hard bop and the soul jazz era, where you would have this guitar player, Kenny Burrell, of course, George Benson, where they would mix up jazz harmonies with the blues scale. You get things like on 2-5-1s. Like mixing the blues scale in your lines, different areas or different types of blues scales. Yeah, there's definitely belongs in jazz, blues scales. The lick is the highest rated meme of all time in jazz. I don't know what I can say about the lick. It's a melodic fragment. It's something that people use. I don't think they do it on purpose. Nowadays you don't hear it almost anywhere anymore unless it's on purpose. So it has developed its own meta type of thing. But yeah, it's just, it is what it is. The lick. 12-bar blues. Oh, by the way, if I was not clear enough about the lick is what I just played. So this melody, you hear it a lot in a lot of improvisations, jazz solos, and nowadays it's seen as a meme because you hear it everywhere, from Coltrane to Louis Armstrong to pop songs that have it somewhere because maybe a producer was a bit jazzy. It's just something like, I could play a line on Giant Steps and end on the lick, for example. I don't know, something like that. Like that you just start variating. 12-bar blues, it's a traditional type of blues that got developed later on to jazz blues, but the original 12-bar blues is of course the 1, stay on the 1, still on the 1, one more bar of 1, 4, 2 bars, back to 1, 8 bar, and then the 9th goes to 5th degree, 4th degree, and the 1 again. And then you can do the 5 if you want. And that was 12 bars if you count it along. And then later on, jazz musicians did their own jazz blues type of version, where instead of staying on the 1 for 4 bars, you now go to the 4th and then back to the 1. And then you go to the 4th again on bar 5. So that's something that a traditional blues does not have. And that it comes from the idea of harmonic movement, like jazz musicians added harmonic movement in that area to a lot of songs to make it more contrapoint to when you improvise, to give more interest, to make it more rich, I think. So just by doing that thing where you go to the 4th, you can have a lot of different movements. You can have the... You know, where you can do like that thing just by going to the 4th, or not, you know, you just have more options, that's it. And some harmonic movement, because it's a lot of 1. Especially if you have like jazz improvisations, it can be, it's already rough enough, you know. Whiplash is a movie about jazz education, about jazz conservatory. It was a very good movie, very interesting. Yeah, I'm not a movie reviewer, but I did like the movie. I like jazz. It was nice to see jazz, a movie about the life of people who study jazz. So yeah, it's quite famous nowadays. It's definitely, when people think of jazz, they think of this movie if they've seen it. Or I think it was quite well known, like 10 years ago or 5 years ago, came out. Peanuts. It's getting a bit darker. Peanuts could mean, you know, peanuts could be just people that eat peanuts while they're listening to jazz. It could be salt peanuts, perhaps. Of course, it's salt peanuts. From the tune is a jazz tune from Dizzy Gillespie where he shouts salt peanuts, and it's hilarious. Trust me, if you hear it, it's like an octave. Something like that. I don't know exactly the notes. The rhythm is like that, and then that high part. That's salt peanut, and sometimes you would shout it instead of playing. So it's also a bit of a meme. What jazz memes? Nat King Cole, famous jazz singer, jazz piano player, very good piano player, made famous the piano trio setting of having piano, guitar, and bass, which was quite tough because piano and guitar in jazz can clash a lot and it can be quite hard, but he made it very famous and he got a lot of success from it. And also, like, just as a piano player, great solos, and as a singer, of course, beautiful voice, most rich, one of my favorite singers. It's just a great singer. Any standard that you want to check, if he sang it, that's definitely the version, like a great version to check out. And also, if you're a guitar player, or a piano player, a good way to listen to those trios, because it really teaches you a lot about the relationship between piano and guitar and how they can work together. Vince Guaraldi, Peanuts. Yeah, I don't know that one, but maybe I'll check it out. I didn't know that Vince Guaraldi also had a tune called Peanuts. Was not on the Christmas album, I guess. Smooth jazz, evolution from, or degeneration from soul jazz. Most people then think of Kenny G, of course, super commercial. But you can also have a lot of smooth jazz that comes from, still very good players that I think we'll see also later on. Smooth jazz is like the typical blend type of coffee shop music or lift elevator music type of thing. So yeah, it's a genre of style, especially popular in the 70s, 80s. Yeah, it's this great player Lee Ritenour that you can classify as a smooth jazz player. Well, it was those animated shows he did the music for called the Peanuts. Really? Huh. Oh, those. Of course. Then I think it's actually referring to this show because now that I think of it, it has a lot of jazz because the kid was like a good piano player that would play like some jazz tunes, or they were like jamming out to jazz and these things from that Vince Guaraldi would play. Because it says only Peanuts, then I guess it makes more sense that it's about the show actually than it is about Salt Peanuts. So yeah, first mistake already. And first phase, but it's a tricky iceberg, Jazz is very tricky. You think it's who listened to jazz for the first time and thought, man, this is easy, I can do this. It seems simple. It's not. And when I say this, I of course mean like smooth jazz or like chill out, relaxed jazz, but it seems simple, but it's not. Like if you have to jam on C minor 7 with like a static band and keep it interesting, that's harder than it looks. Frank Sinatra, of course, who doesn't know Frank Sinatra? The most famous singer of jazz, probably the most famous singer of the century, past century maybe. It's just, great singer, great timing also. Famous record with Count Basie Orchestra. Yeah, just amazing. I've checked out a lot of standards that he sings just to see how he sings, how he times, how he phrases, and try to imitate, try to transcribe him. It's a very good thing to do, especially for the quarter note timing that he has. Harlem Renaissance. This I do not know. Harlem. Harlem Renaissance was the development of the Harlem neighborhoods. I've never heard of this. The Harlem Renaissance was an intellectual and cultural revival of African American music, dance, art, fashion, literature, theater, politics, and scholarship centered in Harlem, spanning the 1920s and 1930s. Okay. So it included new African American cultural expressions across the urban areas in the Northeast and Midwest United States, affected by a renewed militancy in the general struggle for civil rights. combined with the great migration of African American workers fleeing the racist conditions of the Jim Crow Deep South, as Harlem was the final destination of the largest number of those who migrated north. That's very interesting. That might also explain, the development of New York City jazz. I didn't know about it. So it was kind of like a refugee. Harlem Renaissance, very important parts of jazz history. Question. Hi Tiago, I've been following your channel for a while now. I really enjoy your music. Question, how much of what you do is improvised composed? So when what I do, you mean as in when I play live, where I generally play, or is in videos? In videos, I generally have an idea, for example, I want to play like this type of thing, or I want to play like a in-your-face solo, or I want to play more chilled out solo, or I want to try out a certain type of lick from a vocabulary that I learned somewhere, and I want to like insert that somewhere, and but most of it is improvised. Yeah, I also play a lot of classical music. From time to time pops up. Sometimes I do arrangements, chord melody arrangements. Those are composed, or I guess arranged. Yeah. Love his records with Jobim. Yeah. You mean Vince Guaraldi recorded with Jobim? That would be amazing. Did he really? I'm really missing out on the Vince Guaraldi train. I know that Vince Guaraldi recorded with a really good Brazilian guitar player, Bola Sete, who's very good. They have some really cool YouTube videos of them for the band and Bola Sete playing together. Very cool. So Vince Guaraldi Jobim. No, he did play some tunes from Jobim. Oh, no, I meant Sinatra. Sorry. Okay. Man, Sinatra. That's even... Oh, wait, I get it. Jobim and Sinatra. Yes. Very good records. Definitely. There's a story like... about how Jobim did not want to go to the USA and sing with Sinatra because he did not like to travel. He wanted to stay in Brazil and everything, but it was good for his career, so he got kind of forced to do it. It's crazy to think about, but yeah, in the end, Jobim did live for a period in New York City. But he would have preferred to stay in Brazil. But yeah, this record is really good. Also really cool arrangements. New Orleans, next one. We also talked about it. Louis Armstrong, King Oliver, the type of improvisation where you play together. It's after ragtime, the next development in jazz, so it's still here. Bing Crosby, I'm disappointed in myself. I did expect more. I don't know what Bing Crosby is. I have no idea. You mean like Bill Crosby, or Bill Cosby, or what the hell is Bing Crosby? cannot believe this. What? He was an American singer and actor. First multimedia star, he was one of the most popular and influential musical artists of the 20s. What? I've never heard of him. Man. It's been a long time. Swinging on a Star, I'll Be Home for Christmas. Pistol Packing Mama. Man, does it sound like bangers? I don't know it. I'll Be Home for Christmas. White Christmas. I guess he sings the definite version of these like popular songs. Okay. But was he a jazz singer? Did it say was a jazz singer or more like just a very famous singer that happened to be popular during the jazz era? So then he just used the jazz type of thing. His early career coincided with recording innovations that allowed him to develop an intimate singing style that influenced many male singers who followed, such as Perry Como, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Elvis Presley. Okay, so that's very interesting. I should check him out. So then, also on Bossa Nova, you have like João Gilberto, of course, very intimate, very like maybe extremely intimate, like very subtle, very almost speaking wise, like he's like really, he's sitting together with you in a small room, and this type of thing I love. So like this, I didn't know that he was one of the first to do this, and it's interesting then that it was because of the technological progress that happened. He was the Young magazine said that he was the person who had done the most for the morale of overseas servicemen during World War II. The most admired man alive in 1948. Man, he was banging. He was during bebop, you know, he was making money. That's nice. While everyone was doing Donna Lee, this guy was doing White Christmas. You gotta be smart if you want to make it. No, kidding. Of course, I'm sure he's great. I have to check. Bing Crosby was a popular singer in like the 30s and 40s, but I don't know about internationally. Yeah, maybe that's why, because I'm not from the States, so I don't know if maybe it's like obvious for everyone except for me here. I had never heard of him. He's been in probably a lot of movies. I think he has a lot of the crooner's influence. Yeah, Wikipedia fact checked you on that. Bing Crosby. Kenny G is a musician. In the Mood, you have, I think this refers to the Glenn Miller version, like a very popular, I think, big band type of thing. Yeah, and a standard, well, is it a standard? I don't know if people still play it nowadays. In the Mood. Yeah, so the definite version is from Glenn Miller. Not sure if he wrote it. It has lyrics. Did Glenn Miller write In the Mood? Question mark. Glenn Miller's 1939 hit recording of In the Mood made NPR's list of the 100 most important American musical works of the 20th century. Glenn Miller did not write In the Mood. The composing credit goes to Joe Garland. David Miller is not related to Glenn Miller, but he counts that among his life's disappointments. Whoa. what does David Miller have to do with? And Joe Garland. I wonder if his family of Red Garland. Very famous jazz player, jazz piano player from that, well, a bit later era. Joe Garland, American saxophonist. You see if he's related to Red Garland. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can find that now, but if you don't know, Red Garland, for piano players, like the master of block chords, of improvising with block chord style, which on the guitar, if you sometimes can do like chord melody phrases while you're improvising. So for example, if you have 2-5-1, you do a line, and then maybe you mix up the line with some chords, block style chords. But then, well, wait a second. Like this type of thing. But then on piano, he was a master of it. Sometimes he would also play like the same chord, like the same voicing, but just a top note change, a bit like Bill Evans later on did in his own way. It's like block chord style, Red Garland, super important. But yeah, big tangent from Red Garland, Joe Garland, the original composer from In the Mood. Super famous, one of the most important jazz records ever. Wes's chord solos are all drop twos, right? Well, I think so, because it's what sounds sounds like it. I wouldn't say, well, definitely it's not on purpose that he would say I'm going to do drop twos or something like that. I think it's more the sound and being easy to play and having like that sound, more compact type of sound than if you have like different types of intervals above. So it might be that sometimes he doesn't do drop twos, because I don't think he's thinking about drop twos necessarily. I haven't thought about drop twos in a long time. So now you've ruined my whole week. Actually, I have to learn drop twos. Improvisation, of course. Improvise. That is one of the most important elements in jazz, you would say, nowadays, and also in that area maybe not so much. It's definitely a misconception that improvisation and jazz is like a very connected thing. If you look at the players from back then, if you go listen to their alternate takes, for example, on some tunes, you see that they're not necessarily improvising everything like 100%. They are doing things that they repeat from different takes. There are some bands, like the modern jazz quartet, for example, where maybe there wasn't so much improvisation, there was a lot more arrangements, and it still had the swing feel, you know. Some big band songs did not have improvisation at all. And some did, and some had a lot of improvisation, and some, of course, bebop tunes had a lot of improvisation. But I am curious to hear, like, if there were some live recordings there, or if you could listen live and see, man, like, you know, how improvised is everything really, because there are things that are repeating, and yeah, it's a surface level part of jazz, and you have to know how to do it. But you can argue that the classical musician should also be able to improvise in a certain style, like in Baroque, just like jazz musicians have to improvise in a certain style, like bebop. It's not genre defining, but it's an element that appears a lot. I do have a lot to say about improvisation. Fly Me to the Moon, Sinatra, I think biggest hit with Count Basie. I think everyone knows it. Still sang today by many Sinatra type singers. Michael Bublé, for example, I think sings him a lot. Yeah, it's if you have a jazz gig, background gig, and you have to play with a singer, she's gonna want to sing "Fly Me to the Moon," or he is gonna, especially if he's a guy singing, a jazz singer guy, then he'll probably want to do "Fly Me to the Moon." So definitely learn this in all 12 keys, or just do the iReal Pro app, and then you're good to go. Improvisation happens in every music that is not written. Yeah, that's true. And I think improvisation is how songs started to appear, because everything was improvised. Before you can write, you play before, and you did not write. So it's like Wayne Shorter has a quote about how improvisation is composition sped up, I think. Was that the correct analogy? Improvisation is composition. Yeah, because it just happens instantaneously and it's gone. And with composition, it's fixed, and you can develop it, and you have more time to think, and you have more contemplation. But for example, like Beethoven, for example, when he moved, I think where was it, like Austria or Germany or something, before he became a famous composer, he had to establish his name, and he did that by improvising in concerts and getting like really interactive with audiences. Beethoven was an improviser, definitely a very good improviser. Also composers before him like Mozart and such. Bach, of course, was... but Beethoven was specialized as a live improviser in front of audiences. And that's how he made his name before he managed to make orchestras and make people interested in joining an orchestra to play his suites and compositions. So it's... And I do not believe that he would play everything as it was written there. I think if it was a live performance, he would have taken much more freedom with how he would play classical music. And it's a huge can of worms to go through, but yeah, it's... some people... Devin says, transcribing players like Sonny Stitt makes me realize how much he's really worked out. There's so many phrases he repeats. Improvisation is just composition sped up, I would think. Yeah, that's I just talked about it. And yeah, if you start studying, like if you start working out what these players are playing and these people are playing, then you start to see, man, it's actually much more balanced. So like nowadays, classical music is like the extreme... arranged type of thing, extremely fixed, the notes that you play. And jazz, if you get started on jazz, is the other extreme, where you have to, when you play a solo, it's like you have to come up with everything on your own. You have to reinvent a jazz solo, and that's absolutely not true. Like these guys, were not reinventing the language every time they played a solo. There's many things that they worked out, and especially when it's higher tempo, they've definitely worked out a lot of things that they would like to play, that they would like to show up on improvisation, and they have to get the technique down to be able to play it. And also themes, melody, how you play a melody, how you interpret it on a ballad, for example. These things would be working out to a certain degree. And it's a very important element to not forget. So when we hear Coltrane play I'm old-fashioned, for example, do not think that he just walked into the studio and let's play my old-fashioned, and he just came up with a melody how he played it there. These things have been very well thought about. Where's the Bach bootlegs? If you can find a Bach bootleg, you're gonna be a millionaire. But wait, how? There's not even man. I'm getting trolled. Yeah, it's a shame when people only learn arranged music. Yeah. Well, I think you miss a lot of the spontaneity from improvisation. Improvisation does not only mean that you come up with new notes. It can also be interaction, dynamics. You play things in a certain type of way, differently than others. And if it's very arranged and you don't know how to get out of it, it can be very fixed, that the way that you're going to play. And that can feel uninspiring. And the audience, it's harder to connect then. What killed improvisation in classical music was sheet music pressing, and in popular music is recordings. Yeah, that's another whole can of worms, like big debates that you can have about it. That's what Devin just said. Oh yeah, bebop is like a sport. Yeah. Well, it's definitely the Olympics of jazz. We both just watched the same Wayne Shorter interview, I think. Could be, but it's very true. Yeah. Man, the first Louis Armstrong tire. We're over. We're gonna go underwater for quite a long time, actually, because we're not even close to half. Man, there's a lot to go through, and we have to pick up. So I have to keep the tangents, keep these different topics under control. Otherwise, I'm just going to start opening cans of worms after cans of worms, and it's before we know it, we're debating conspiracy theories or something. There's going to be some conspiracy theories here, that's for sure. Giant steps. Talk about working out things before you play it. Do you think that what Coltrane played on his recording of Giant Steps is 100% improvised? Do you think it's 50% improvised? I think it's less than 50%. I think he worked out a lot of the things that he played there, and you can also hear it if you transcribe it, and there's nothing wrong with it. Same thing for Countdown on his recording. A lot of these things, you see it. If you transcribe it, you see like these patterns popping up under the same chord. It's vertical preparation type of thing. And there's nothing wrong with it because it sounds great, and you listen to the record and it sounds great. It's what it is. But it's a super important composition, Giant Steps. Major thirds modulation based off an augmented triad, G, B, D sharp. So the G augmented triad, or you can see, or the B augmented triad, or the E D sharp augmented triad, however you want to see it. And he would modulate through those based upon his, I call it his own theories, because at a certain point, I think it's really thinks this is something that he came up with. I don't think it's fair to say that he just copied this from someone or something. You do see, for example, on Feifi Fa Fum or something from Wayne Shorter, you do see that he did use some Coltrane changes before Coltrane, I think. And Wayne Shorter and Coltrane would study a lot together. So it's funny to see how different their approaches was. Yes, we're on the train tire and we're going to be here until breakfast. Yes. Well, I mean, we're in Europe. I guess you're also in Europe. So it's going to be a long night. Now I'm going to pick up the pace. Giant steps. Oh, yeah. I just went through that. So, yeah. Nice, nice. Very nice. Also, very nice piano solo on the original recording that has been memed infinitely times nowadays. But Tommy Flanagan, the piano player, he did redeem himself, and he did a great piano trio recording of Giant Steps, and he sounded amazing on it. Recommend everyone to check out Tommy Flanagan Trio Giant Steps. Great recording. And he can play Giant Steps 10 years later. Coltrane worked it out to sound like a badass. Then he just hands the lead sheet to Tommy Flanagan and say good luck. And he also, after the piano solo, he just comes in destructive. He comes in like a maniac. And everyone is hanging for their life, trying to survive this tune. If you hear like the drummer, Art Taylor, I think it was, he's actually like phrasing, like his drum phrasing, he's hinting as if the form is repeating one bar earlier or something, I think. So he's actually also lost the form in a way. The bass player is I think Paul Chambers, I think is the one that's actually keeping up with the form, because I think the drummer, if you listen to the CD, to the recording, he's kind of the drummer also lost the form actually before the piano solo, like during the saxophone solo already. And Train comes in and it's clear immediately when he comes. Coltrane worked it out. Yeah, this. I read a paper where a dude traced Coltrane trying those changes while he was doing big band work. Interesting. It was something he was noodling for decades, and he didn't even give a fuck. He just realized that yeah, he paid for those people to be there, I think, like, because Tommy Flanagan was like a studio musician back then, so he paid for that solo. So let's think about it. Chorus and bridge. Chorus and bridge. You can see this in different ways. So you have in standards, you have the form AABA, for example, where the A is the theme, the main theme, and then you have the B part where you have a variation. You go somewhere else, and then you go back to the A. I think Monk tunes are almost, by majority, there are AABA tunes. Yeah, there's a lot of standards before Monk, of course, that were also chorus and bridge. I call it now chorus and bridge, but originally it's AABA. It's not thought about as chorus and bridge. But nowadays, of course, with pop music, it eventually, the AABA form developed into standards had verses before, where you would sing, like before All the Things You Are, you have a verse that you sing before. Yeah, you have this verse, and from there, the verse, you have the chorus, all the things that you are. That's the chorus of the song, actually. And in jazz, we mostly play the chorus, and then you can say that the B part is like the bridge, and that the verses were not really played by instrumentalists. So sometimes Stardust usually has the verse played quite often. And from there, these things developed into the pop music where you have verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. It all originates from this Tin Pan Alley type of songs that we saw on the tire above from the era of Louis Armstrong. No wrong notes. That means that in jazz there's no wrong notes. I think it was Miles Davis who had the exact quote. No wrong notes. Quotes. Yes, I agree. You even have it in a inspirational type of poster. There are no... Wait. There are no wrong notes in jazz. Only notes in the wrong places. Miles Davis. That's actually a very good quote. Which is true, you know. As I said before, if you start thinking about your instrument more as percussion and more as like rhythm and time feel being the most important thing, then you start to realize if you play whichever note you want on the whichever chord you want, it's going to be fine. You're going to be well, you're not going to be fine. You're going to sound a bit out, but it's just if it sounds awkward, then maybe it's not in the wrong place where it's supposed to. So that's the quote. There are no wrong notes. And nowadays it's a meme that you can play whatever you want. And by jazz there's no wrong notes and you just play whatever. Dominant sevens. Yeah, that's a big can of worms. Dominant sevens. Yeah, it's the 5 of a 2-5-1. It's the dominant chord. You can also see it as the blues chord with the 7th and these things. Yeah, it's a very important chord, maybe the most important chord in jazz. Dude, you know, Brilliant Corners from Monk don't have a good take. They had to glue a bunch of takes to release. Really? No way. Are you... Brilliant Corners. Take? Glue? Wow. A dozen takes. On October 15th, Monk attempted to record the title track with the same band during a 4-hour session. The complexity of the title track became a challenge for Monk's sideman, who attempted 25 takes, led to tension between him and Henry, who nearly broke down mentally, and Pettiford, who exchanged harsh words with Monk during the session. Monk tried to make it easier on Henry by not playing during his alt solo. During one of the takes, producer Horin Keep News and others in the control room could not hear Pettiford's playing and checked his bass microphone for a malfunction, but ultimately realized that he was phantoming his playing. What? He was just playback? Without a completed single take, Keep News ultimately pieced together the album version from multiple takes. On December 7th... Wait, so they failed. They didn't even got a take? And then the producer just glued it together? What? On the 7th, and Monk is a savage. I wish I was alive to meet Monk and get insulted by him and then get in a fight with him. Imagine if you get in a fight with Monk. Have you ever heard him speak on interviews and stuff? You have no idea what he's saying, and he's just pissed off and he's coming right at you. Like, what do you do? He's like, you're trying to record Brilliant Corners with him. it's like take number 19, and he's just like going and like angry at you, and you're like, what am I supposed to do? I guess you just have to fight it. Monk would piss me off too. It's one of the best Monk. That's true. It's one of the best. Bit of studio magic, not the end of the world. Yeah, it's true, but it's a bit sad like that. The sidemen were so afraid of him that they were just starting to mimic their playing, that they were not playing anymore. They were so afraid of him. And I think no one knew what was going on with, like, what he wanted, actually. Too. It's a great record. But yeah, dominant sevens. I'm sure there's a lot of dominant sevens on that one. Birth of Cool. Birth of Cool. That's the start of cool jazz with Miles Davis. With how was it called? Gil Evans, the arranger. Cool jazz, where it's more mellow type, not as aggressive as New York bebop. More arranged also. And more melodic, as in more longer notes in the melodies, also more melodic type of melodies instead of based off 8 notes and these things. It's just a very different type of phrasing. Also, I believe in the record he also had classical musicians on the band. Yeah, very important, very popular also. Kind of the start of smooth jazz, if you think about it. Chord symbols. Yeah, chord symbols, you can check it out very fast. As everyone knows it, if you're into jazz, you've seen it, if you've played jazz. You have a lot of different types. I think you also have a lot of different types to do, like the major 7. You can do them... yeah, like this. I did learn that if you use a symbol, like if you use a certain type during your lead sheet, you should stick to it, otherwise it gets confusing, which is true. Like there are some of the chord symbols that can mess you up, like if you're not sure if your lowercase m is not too different from the uppercase M, and then maybe they think it's a C major but without a 7th, or do you write C, but you usually don't write C M for C major, but some people do get confused from it. So it is good to like choose, like be very clear, okay, for C major 7s I'm going to write this symbol and these things, to not do confusion, to avoid confusion. Come on, Bird of Cool is not smooth. Yeah, it's not smooth, but with jazz you have like the big band, New Orleans, ragtime. It had all been very aggressive, very bluesy, very in your face type of playing. The blues type of phrasing, the type of way to play a note, and with Cool of Jazz, they started to do a very different approach. But of course, it's not smooth jazz. It's not Kenny G. It's not something. But it is more. It's more introspective. Kind of Blue is more introspective than steaming with the Miles Davis Quintet. Triangle and the word, yeah, chord symbols can give a lot of confusion. Johnny Hodge, famous saxophone player from Duke Ellington Big Band. I believe he played Sophisticated Lady, I think. He was like his feature. Yeah, also, I think he composed some tunes. It's very good tone, very good sound. Wes kind of started smooth, but he still kills on it. Yeah, my opinion. Yeah, I really like Wes's, I think, all the records I really like. There is a funny TV appearance, maybe we can watch it later on another time, where you see him play with a singer, and he's playbacking because his guitar is not even plugged in, and it's live on TV, and he's just, it's a bit sad. Like, it's an amazing player. You can trust that it's going to sound fine, but I guess maybe they didn't want to mic an amp or something, or it's just more practical. Girl from Ipanema, famous Jobim bossa nova tune, deceptively difficult. It's a AABA form. The A part is based off Take the A Train. Take the A Train. The chords for Take the A Train from Duke Ellington, and the B part is very has some very surprising chord changes. However, there is a secret about Girl from Ipanema that not many people know about. Unfortunately, because I don't have top audio right now, I don't think I can listen to it. But Johnny Alf, I believe, who originally sang The Girl from Ipanema, Girl from Ipanema is a Brazilian bossa nova jazz song that was written in 1962 by Jobim and Vinicius de Moraes. The first recording came in 1962 by Peri Ribeiro, but it only became a worldwide hit in 1964 with a version by Astor Gilberto and Stan Getz. However, the version from Johnny Alf is also very interesting because the chords are more close to the original version of Jobim that he intended. And especially on the B part, there's the original changes from Girl from Ipanema that actually make more sense. And you can see that the Stan Getz version is a more jazzified or a more 2-5-1 type of thinking version of the harmony from Girl from Ipanema. It's very interesting to see the differences between the original harmonies from Jobim pieces and the jazz Americanized versions, the United States of America versions of these things. And Johnny Alf was a great musician. Yeah, definitely. Not very well known outside of Brazil, I think. Pentatonics, coltrane, you know where it's going. Sidestepping, for example, like that you play pentatonics. Pentatonic scale of 5 notes that you can play over whatever. It's like the blues scale, but then 1 note less. If you play the pentatonic minor, you can play major pentatonic. You can play many different types of colors. You can superimpose pentatonics on top of pentatonics, on top of pentatonics, on top of pentatonics, on top of other chords, which Coltrane did. You can go very far into it. You can start thinking in patterns because it's such a close type of sound. Close type of thinking with the pentatonics, but it is a more open sound, I think. Coltrane pentatonics go, I think, Louis Armstrong also did a lot of major pentatonic solos on his trumpet and everything. With bebop, it started to leave again the pentatonics and jazz, and then I think with Coltrane, with post-bop, and especially like My Favorite Things and beyond, after Giant Steps, you started to hear a lot of pentatonics in his playing. Also on his solo from Blue Train, there's some cool pentatonics stuff that he does. Johnny Alf was a great musician, much more well versed in jazz piano than Jobim. Yeah, we'll have to check him out on the stream. I know I have listened, but I think it's a good idea to listen to him together. SpongeBob. SpongeBob. SpongeBob Jazz. Oh, apparently. Apparently there's a character in SpongeBob that's called Kelpie. It's a famous clarinet player whose Squidward first appears. Oh, so it appears multiple times. Yeah, there's he plays smooth jazz on TV in SpongeBob. Yeah, okay, it's a parody of Kenny G. Okay. SpongeBob. I guess it's part of the Jazz Iceberg. Hey Tiago, you're Portuguese. Yes, I am Portuguese. I did move to Amsterdam when I was 15. So now I'm 29, so I've been almost half of my life in the Netherlands, and I grew up in Portugal. Sim, eu sei falar português. António Carlos Jobim, the famous composer, great composer, one of my favorite composers of all time. It's so much, like there's whole airports, I believe, in Brazil that's named after Jobim. Very super famous also during his lifetime and afterwards. In my opinion, revolutionized jazz harmony with how he wrote tunes in it's amazing. Jobim. There's that SpongeBob clip of them appreciating freeform jazz. Maybe that's it too. Oh yeah, there is that meme from SpongeBob. SpongeBob jazz meme, where they're like, right? Yeah. I haven't seen the clip though. I cannot see the Facebook meme, but freeform jazz. Interesting. There's so many amazing guitarists from Holland. Renier Bass is crazy. Yeah, you should see him live. It's even crazier. Bebop. Of course, bebop, the famous jazz form, arguably the version that of jazz that destroyed jazz from the popular masses, according to some jazz musicians from that era. It came after the Second World War. Might be related. Developed in the famous jam sessions. I don't remember now the exact place, but with Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Christian, Monk was also there, Max Roach, I think, and they would jam and push the boundaries of this thing. And there's some older musicians that liked it and tried to integrate it into their own playing, such as Lester Young, who tried to do some bebop recordings with Oscar Peterson as well. Great recording, for example, of There Will Never Be Another You. And there's also some other players that did not, such as Louis Armstrong, who said that bebop sounded like Chinese, for like That's a quote from him, I think. So there's people embraced it, some other people did not embrace it. It was never really popular outside of New York, I think. Of course, among musicians it was popular, but not per se that you hear it in the movies from that era, I think. You don't really hear bebop. If you hear jazz, you would hear big band type of things or more orchestra arrangements of standards. It was very aggressive, one of the most challenging forms of jazz to learn, technique-wise, blasting tempos, super slow ballads as well, different types of way of playing, very certain, very specific things that are bebop and things that are not, with phrasing. And if you want to learn, the best way is to check out some Barry Harris teaching videos about what is bebop, how to phrase bebop, from his old masterclasses that you can still find on YouTube. Syncopation, rhythm, timing, a lot of things going on. Jazz ballads, it's just jazz tunes that are played slowly, that are played, ballads, my one and only love. Usually when you refer to jazz ballads, I think usually you mean instrumental versions of ballads, not necessarily the singers. So yeah. I would love to, but I'm in Houston. The only people who come through here are really big names, unfortunately. Well, Renier Bas is starting to be a really big name. He already is here in Europe. But I think he plays sometimes. He had a time that he played a lot in New York, but I don't know, Houston. But then I guess Mike Moreno is from Austin, I think. So not too far. Mike Moreno, also amazing. Milton's, yes, Milton's was the place where those legendary jam sessions happened. In Brazil, you also have a type of place like this. I think it was called Club de Esquina or something, with Milton Nascimento and such. It was very important for Brazilian music scene in the, I think, 60s, 70s. Like, very cool to check out. There's also a band, like a group of musicians that develop some things. Moreno is from Houston. Oh, okay. I thought it was Austin. Man. Usually Europeans make fun of people from the States for their geography, but usually we do not know much about the geography in the States. Yeah. Oh, that's actually a funny story here. Club de Esquina is not a place. I thought they would meet in a bar or something, no? It's the name of the group of friends. Okay, so it was not necessarily that there was like a certain club where they would all go to. When Mike Stern came to Brazil first time, he went to Belo Horizonte and told people to take him to Club de Esquina. Yeah, I would think so too. Good to know. People had to explain it's not a music club. It's cool. Yeah, like, damn. Yeah, I guess like in Brazil, like club can also it be like like in a way club as in like group club, not like club as in bar club. Cannonball Adderley, legendary saxophone player. completely different style from Coltrane, but played together many times. Great admirers of each other. Coltrane much more into the pentatonics, post-form type of bebop, and Cannonball Adderley more blues, bebop, soul type of playing. Both very extremely good in their own styles. Yeah, like Sports Club. Yeah. Is Portuguese music a lot different than Brazilian? I'm afraid I don't really know any Portuguese music. Portuguese music, we can go into it another time, is not as rich or as developed as Brazilian music, also not as popular. Different type, much more melancholic, much more less rhythmically and harmonically, of course, rich than Brazilian music. Brazilian music is a whole another level. I don't think there's any music as rich as music that comes from Brazil. And Brazil is so big, and every different region has so many specific things that Portuguese music we do not even cannot even come close to it. Usually, Portuguese music is very singer based, singer centric. From the fado music and these things, so it's very much about accompaniment, and there's not really been a very big development yet to really that Brazil had with Brazil had a period where you had this friction between choro musicians and musicians that wanted to play bossa nova, musicians that wanted to play the samba, like there were always people who are more traditional and don't want to break things, and there comes a new generation. And in Portugal, now there's people among myself that are starting to try to do what Brazil did with samba and bossa nova. We're trying to do that with fado, where we bring more jazz influences into it to bring more richness from different things. I think it's silly to try to keep it as a tradition and not develop the music. It has to be developed, otherwise it won't stay. You know, 50s, 40s music here had a lot of influence of fado, those dramatic stuff, bebop. So yeah, fado, bolero, a lot of influence to samba composers. Yeah, I hear it in some certain types of Brazilian music, for sure. Herbie Hancock, everyone knows Herbie Hancock, piano player, super famous. Miles Davis, still alive. Great piano player, one of the best. Check out his solo on All of You with live with the Miles Davis Quintet. Great piano solo on All of You. Combos, those are names for jazz bands. Next, in the pocket, that means that you're usually refers to the rhythm section. Or I think you can refer to anyone when you play something that's in the pocket, so something that's more like very rhythmic, clear, and you like popular, that you just is just a way of saying something like then you're playing on the pocket if you play this type of things, instead of playing. If you play more rhythmically ambiguous, then, or you're playing more laid back, or you're playing more longer notes, it's different than if you play in the pocket, and you're playing like really groovy stuff, or you're playing like really great timing or very specific type of timing. At least that's how I see it. Or like if you play funky, or that means that you can play in the pocket. Art Blakey, Jazz Messengers, the godfather of jazz, came a lot of musicians that came through him that then after him went to the Miles Davis band, such as Horace Silver, Wayne Shorter. Lee Morgan was a trumpet player, so he did not went to Miles Davis band, but he was very admired by Miles Davis, and Lee Morgan admired Miles Davis as well. Yeah, and also really good drummer. Yeah. 2 and 4, that means when you play jazz, the 2 and the 4 are very important. You hear it. Some drummers play it all the time, where you have the hi-hat. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, like it, like that. It's the rhythmic metronome from jazz. Jazz waltz. So many. Someday My Prince Will Come, for example. It's just when you have a waltz in jazz feel. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Very basic. Well, I mean very basic, as in nothing very scary or conspiratory about jazz waltz. It's just a type of jazz rhythm. Birdland can refer to the club, can refer to the weather report song composition. Very cool, both. I think Birdland still exists. You have many tunes that refer to Birdland, the club, such as Lullaby of Birdland. There's also some records, famous legendary records recorded in Birdland. Yeah. Time over notes, talked about this. It's when you have this much more importance that you give to your timing, your rhythmic, how you play compared to the notes that you're choosing to play. It's much more important to have good timing, or very, very clear about your time feel. It's very, actually very important, especially if you're starting out on jazz. It's very easy to get lost on all the notes that you can play, all the chords that you can play, on all the solos that you can play, what you play over this chord, what is this scale, what is this, what is that. But time is the most important thing. If you can play whatever you want, if your timing is not good, if your rhythm is not good, if you cannot play clear rhythm as accompanying, as soloist, you're not going to connect. You're not going to be. No one's going to know what you're trying to play, even if you can play all those notes. Timing is the most important thing. There is no musician that you like that has bad timing. That doesn't exist, unless maybe it's like a pop musician that has like really good composition or really good songwriting, and then I don't know, or they fixed it in the studio or something. But it's something that we're so used to. But it is very important to practice it, and most people we are not born with good time, so it's definitely important. Time over notes. Walking bass, that is typical bass walking rhythm where you have quarter notes walking on a jazz beat. It comes, I think, from the prepared Baroque bass continuum, bass continuum, where you would have bass, where you would have different inversions. And you would put triads on top of them and it would be improvised actually. So this is another area of classical music that's actually improvised. And then bass players would play. It's very common that you play a walking bass when you're playing jazz as a bass player. It just works. It's like you give a quarter note, so you're really keeping the beat. You're locking in with the drums by doing that, and you're outlining the harmony. and that's also the story about time over notes. Walking bass, super important, your timing. Of course, as a bass player, you have to have really good intonation so that the harmony is clear. Walking bass, it's probably the most important element in a jazz band. If you have drums and bass, you really have to have a good walking bass. Otherwise, your band's going to suck. Not just, of course, you have to have a good drummer and you have to have a good walking bass beat if you're playing swing time. Otherwise, you can have the best timing as a soloist. If you're listening to your rhythm section and they suck, you have to ignore them and just play your own good timing. So it's nice to have good walking bass. Yeah. Charlie Parker, most famous saxophone player, one of the best, if not the best musician to have ever lived. Legendary stories about him. Check out the movie Bird from Clint Eastwood. Is a good movie about him. Can get you started on get to know more about him. Invented, you can say, or was extremely important in inventing bebop. Wrote a lot of tunes for it. Wrote a lot of contrafacts, where he would write, as we talked about, like he would write solos type of thing, melodies, but they were not really solos. They were much more motive based than his real solos, and he would write these things on standards. So, for example, Donna Lee is actually based off what was it, Indiana or something, like another standard, and he just wrote a bebop melody on top of it, and it's like a contrafact. It's a bebop tune. So most of bebop tunes are contrafacts, and Charlie Parker was, I think, one of the first people that did that, I believe, if not the first. And another thing that most people forget about him, it's there's so much depth about Charlie Parker, how he plays the bebop, how he phrases it. Never underestimate, never think that you can play like Charlie Parker. Never think that it's you get him, because there's a lot of depth into this musician. And also, if you listen to how he plays ballads, if you listen to how he plays with strings, Charlie Parker with strings, it's insane. There's a lot to learn from these recordings. And just as Dizzy Gillespie, he loved Latin music and also did some things with Latin music. I think he also plays Tico Tico no Fubá from Brazil. So would be interesting if instead of Stan Getz we had Charlie Parker with Jobim and Astrud Gilberto, João Gilberto, playing Girl from Ipanema. It would be interesting. It's insane to me where Bird got his ideas. To me, it's easy to see where Coltrane and others look to for their influence, but nobody before Parker sounded like that. Well, definitely Lester Young was a big influence on him. He also got hired to play with Dizzy Gillespie. Dizzy Gillespie was already doing some big band arrangements that were with musicians that were already pushing things by themselves. They went through war, so there was more changes happening in the music scene there. He had a lot of influences by modern classical music, but for his time, also Stravinsky. There's a story of him playing live somewhere in New York, and Stravinsky walks in with some friends and sits at the table to listen to Charlie Parker. And Charlie Parker sees him. If you listen to the version of All the Things You Are by Charlie Parker, you have this intro. That's a quote from, I believe, Stravinsky. There's a story that Charlie Parker, usually he would start the concerts with like medium type of swing or thing. He saw Stravinsky and he called Coco. He called like a super high tempo rhythm changes. And on his solo, he quoted Firebird, and Stravinsky went crazy and started clapping and cheering. And it was like at plus 300 BPM speed. It was insane. Live, just on the motion, totally different type of set list. Just to give an idea of how fearless he was, how confident he was, and how knowledgeable he was of things, and how his audio creativity, how big it was. Yeah, very important musician. If not the most important. The Charleston. I think that's this rhythm. One, two, three, four. I think. Let me see. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I wonder if it's a dance also. Charleston rhythm. Charleston rhythm is simply a dotted quarter note followed by an 8th note. This rhythm is used all the time and sounds great in both single line playing and comping, but one progression that is specially suited to 12-bar jazz blues. Oh, so it could also technically be on the 3 and the 4 end. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or maybe that would be a bit crazy. Interesting. Benny Goodman, I believe he was the one that played with Charlie Christian, that discovered Charlie Christian, super important jazz guitar player. All right, Francis, good night. I should be going to bed, man. This is crazy. I'll try to... I'll do my best. I think I can finish it. We'll see how far I get. Good night, man. Nice that you were here, man. Always appreciate to see you. It's a long time already. Benny Goodman. Yeah, one of the most popular swing bands, big band leaders. Great. He also started doing things with smaller bands, smaller combos from big bands. I think he was one of the first, where they would also improvise much more. So, important, definitely. You have Quincy Jones, the arranger from the famous Fly Me to the Moon Frank Sinatra thing with Count Basie. Huge arranger, huge producer, also for Michael Jackson. A lot of famous pop artists still alive to this day, I believe. Yes. Important for Jacob Collier, for example, nowadays. And I also know some musicians that are still getting like mentored and picked up by Quincy Jones. So he's still very active. Very hard-working man. I think trumpet player is how he started. Just a very complete arranger. Very knowledgeable. Bossa Nova, as I said before, is hard to explain. Bossa, yeah. A lot of people play bossa like this. Apparently, according to Nelson Faria, it should be like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And also anticipate the chord change. which is very interesting to think about. Of course, if you listen to João Gilberto and all, like, of course you hear both going through each other, but I think they just have more options than us if we don't know about it. So yeah, I don't think necessarily if tambourine is in bossa nova as important. I really think, for me, bossa nova is very the cool jazz of samba or something. It's just not the instruments, it's just not the chords that are more dense and more rich. Because, of course, in choros and sambas, there were very cool chord progressions and very interesting modulations. But in bossa nova, also the chords themselves became more richer with more higher extensions. I mean, tambourines were the levadas. That I did not know. Okay. It's taken, João Gilberto is imitating the tambourine. Okay, good to know. Yeah, tambourine, super important for Brazilian music. You have to know it. Especially as a guitar player, it's extremely important that you know what the tambourine does and how it sounds. And that's where that idea of here is how it looks like, and that's where that idea of having that thing that I talked about in the beginning, that you hear all those things that in a tambourine you also hear, like with the sticks, like you hear all those ghost notes, you hear all going on, and then you have these accents in between. And yeah, in bossa nova, the chords became less staccato, they became more connected with each other. The rhythms were played more connected, more legato, more than usual, at least. There's a lot to talk about bossa nova. Also a lot to talk about how jazz musicians played bossa nova. Yeah, one of the most interesting music styles in the world. Dave Brubeck, very good composer, piano player from the famous Take 5 recording that was actually composed by Paul Desmond, not by Dave Brubeck. Let me just make sure that I'm not lying. Paul Desmond, very good saxophone player, who has interviewed Charlie Parker. You can listen to an interview from Paul Desmond interviewing Charlie Parker on the radio or something, I think. Interesting. But Dave Brubeck, composer, a piano player. A lot of piano players that did not like how Dave Brubeck played because they said they did not have a good time feeling, not good rhythm, kind of like mediocre piano player. But as a composer, like, he has a lot of, especially with odd time signatures, he had that Time Out album where he would do different types of time signatures into jazz compositions and different things. So very cool. YouTube influencers, that's me. I'm a YouTube influencer. No, I'm not a YouTube influencer. I think YouTube influencers, it means more like people maybe like Adam Neely or something, or maybe it's just a meme entry, or I don't know if there's jazz YouTube influencers even. I don't think Adam Neely is necessarily an influencer. Anyways, Dizzy Gillespie, if he was alive today, he would definitely have a YouTube channel and be a YouTube influencer. Dizzy Gillespie, very extroverted, wrote Salt Peanuts that we talked about before. Big buddy friends with Charlie Parker. Helped develop bebop together. A lot of songs, a lot of bebop heads are co-written with Charlie Parker. There are some tunes where Charlie Parker plays with Miles Davis that Dizzy Gillespie plays piano on. Also very good composer, especially for Latin jazz. He has a lot of interesting compositions like Con Alma and Night in Tunisia, where it's a very good, different type of style from other Latin jazz composers before and later on. Very important player and composer. And he was mixing jazz with Latin music, not just Brazilian music, but also Cuban music. Afro-Cuban also. Already way ahead of his time. And he lived long, and he played with a lot of musicians that are still alive today, that got mentored by him. Cool jazz, we already talked about up on the tire above, about the birth. Oh no, on the same tire here. About the cool jazz, start of cool jazz. Cool jazz, where you put glasses on while you play. Sunglasses. Freddie Hubbard, I also mentioned him as the other extreme of Miles Davis, where Miles Davis is more sparse on his note choice and very conscious about the spaces that he leaves between the notes. Freddie Hubbard also conscious, of course, but filling much more notes in and being more aggressive, also timing-wise, than Miles Davis. Freddie Hubbard, very good bebop trumpet player, very technical, good also. Charles Mingus, important bass player, composer, very angry man. Lots of stories also in his band where he got upset and would hurt people or fight. He would like to fight people, all these things. Yeah. Very important bass player, person, composer. Some crazy arrangements from his own tunes, some crazy titles from his own tunes. There's a couple really funny ones. Jackie McLean pulled a knife on him. Man. I heard that story, yeah. Charles Mingus. Tunes. Let's have a look. Okay. Hora de Cubitus. Okay, we're getting kind of weird. Okay, group of dancers, folk forms, meditation for a pair of wire cutters. So this is a meditation for a pair of wire cutters. What? The shoes of the fisherman's wife are some jive-ass slippers. That's the name of the song. From the album Let My Children Hear Music. So this was not a person that really cared about what you thought. He wrote a lot of things, also activist for people who, were discriminated or he was someone that if he wanted something, he would go after it. Have you heard the tape of Freddie Hubbard screaming at people in the crowd? There was a few angry guys. Freddie, what? Hubbard screaming at the crowd? Tape. When wild musicians. It's from the press. This is an article. Okay. Drunken Adams. Was a disaster night. So this is a news article talking about jazz trumpeter Freddie Hubbard is the star of this article. Specifics: around 1967 at an unknown venue, probably in Europe. What do you mean, probably in Europe? Why Europe? You might have to... Maybe, I think this is like a description of what happened on the tape. On a bootleg tape that has been passed from collector to collector for close to 40 years, Hubbard can be heard unleashing some torrential trumpet riffs and then uncorking the full tirades to a jeering audience. Fuck you, why? In 1967. Is this what he said on your tape? Voice in the crowd says, "Go home." Well, okay, I'll go home. If you don't like me, kiss my ass. That's right, because you jive, you white motherfuckers. You the ones who started this shit. Let me show you, you the ones. Whoa. Starts to weep. Did he cry? He cries? How is this not a meme yet? He cried? Is this on tape? If you don't like me, kiss my... The drummer tries to launch into the next song. I won't do it. The aftermath is unknown, though this was not to be the last of Hubbard's meltdowns, nor the last to be caught on tape. Another was at Cleveland Club, the front row, where in 1977 he stormed off the stage screaming, "Miles Davis, Miles Davis, Miles Davis, I ain't Miles Davis." Man, what a time to be alive. Imagine you go to a concert of Jacob Collier and he just starts screaming at everyone because you just he starts crying because he's not Jamie Cullum or something. Yeah, I'll look up so that we can see this tape. Tape. Angry crowd. Oh well, I'll find it. Thanks for the. I don't remember in crime. I just and if he cried, that's next level. Political jazz, yes. Charlie Mingus, political jazz. Charles Mingus, not Charlie Mingus. Heroin addiction, also important. A lot of musicians had this problem. It's definitely not something to be proud of or something that inspired or something that they tried. All of them tried to quit. Coltrane, cold turkey. Nothing to joke about. Is very bad. Also very tied to how it was to be a black person, really, in that era of being so much in contact with drugs around you. And there were musicians that would sell it around, pass it around. Like Philly Joe Jones was a very famous heroin dealer that would sell to Bill Evans, for example, to Coltrane even. Like he would make sure that he would sell the drugs to people in his band and these things. And more like him, not just Philly Joe Jones. It's quite normal in that time. So it's a vicious vicious cycle and very hard to get out. They say Charlie Parker addiction started in his teens after a car crash. Yeah, it's just when your life is so, your life is just so vulnerable when you're in such situation that when something bad happens, it's so easy when you have that in your environment as a quick feel better card or a quick if you see people around you doing it, it's just very complicated, and it destroys a lot of people's lives, and there's no prestige or no glory, nothing glorious about getting addicted to drugs. Got hooked on morphine. Yeah. Bud Powell also had a lot of problems with that. It was more mental. I'm not sure if Bud Powell was necessarily a drug addict. But yeah. Maynard Ferguson. I actually know him because isn't he like the trumpet player that plays in a lot of jazz cruises? It's like also kind of fusion trumpet player. Maynard Ferguson. Oh, he passed away. He's a Canadian jazz trumpeter and band leader. He formed his own big band in 1957, so he's an OG. He's yeah, that I did not know. I did hear some things. I don't remember why, but I did watch at least 2 concerts from him on YouTube, from somewhere live. I've never heard any of his albums, but I did see the things that I see was from jazz cruises actually. But I guess since he died in 2006, unless there's another Maynard Ferguson. It was before that. Or maybe I'm confusing with someone else. But I think it was Maynard Ferguson. Modes. It's not necessarily jazz specific. Modes can be, it's really a music theory rabbit hole where you can lose yourself super fast. Modes, you can think of it literally as a mode of a scale, a way of a scale, a mode as in type of a scale. Within a scale, you have 7 points, so you have 7 starting points. You have 7 types of the same scale that have different sounds. If you take that as that starting point, the different point as the starting point. That's where the idea of modal jazz came from, with Miles Davis really thinking in modes, and there it's really important to clarify the root note of the mode so that you don't have that you're just playing a tonality, but that you can really hear that it's a Dorian mode and not necessarily just C major with a D on the bass or something. That you're really thinking of that mode with that root tone. Music theory about melody. It's not necessarily modal jazz. I don't know if there's modal jazz later on, so I'm not going to talk about modal jazz now. Just the music theory part. Sonny Rollins, super famous. I think him, Cannonball Adderley, John Coltrane, some of my favorite all-time saxophone players, best improvisers. Now Sonny Rollins, I think he's not playing anymore because he cannot play anymore, unfortunately. He's still alive though. Kind of like Keith Jarrett, they cannot play anymore right now. And it's a sad situation, but they gave us a lot, and he still does interviews, and He's really a person that's dedicated. He even took hiatus. He went on a year, I think, even where he wouldn't play before he made the Bridge album, where he just focused on playing. So he was very focused on the art that he was making. Yeah. Yeah, Sonny Rollins is so cool. He digs guitar players. Yep. Jim Hall played with him. Peter Bernstein. God, I think his career really started with playing with Sonny Rollins. I don't know for sure. At least in the bigger picture. If you play with Sonny Rollins, then it's immediately a big thing. And he said in that Sonny Rollins wouldn't pretty much say anything about how to play. If you play in his band, he said just play like you play, because that's why I asked you. He wouldn't say play like this or play like that, or can you do more this, can you do more that. You would have total freedom, and so responsibility. Different type of leadership than someone as Coltrane, for example, or Cannonball Adderley. And you can also hear that in their playing. Also played a lot with Miles Davis. Minor 2-5, so that's the variation from the 2-5-1. 2-5-1 can be major or minor. Yeah, I can show you the sound. This is a 2-5-1 in major, because it ends on major, and so the scale where you're deriving the chords from is major, C major. And then a minor 2-5-1 would be based off the C minor type of tonality. So then the 2-5-1 would be, the 2 would be a half diminished instead of a minor 7th. The 5 is a G7, or a dominant 7 still, but then with a flat 9. And there you can have different types of sounds, but it is the flat 9 is important and the flat 13. And then you get a C minor. So yeah, that's a minor 2-5-1, the variation of a 2-5-1 in major. Russell Malone said the first time he played with Sony, he started to comping really fancy. Sony gave a murder look on him. After the gig, he said, "Russell, why do you think I started? I need space." Okay, so then maybe he did say. Yeah, but then I wonder if Russell Malone was playing differently than how he normally plays, for some reason. So maybe then he did say something, I guess. Interesting. Russell Malone, he's amazing guitar player. Comping, that is if you comping, just talked about it, play chords behind the soloist, if you do the accompaniment for the main voice. Multiple instruments can do this. Drums as a type of comping in their rhythms, how they, with the snare drum, usually. Bass can also comp, especially like in modern day sambas and stuff. You have like these big basses, bass guitars that can even play chords, so they can also even comp. Piano players comping chords, guitar also as well, and some saxophone players can also do comping, like Ben Wendell does it sometimes. It's just roles function in a band. Subdividing, that is if you hear if you hear a click, for example, and then you subdivide there all the rhythms within that click. So you have something like you can subdivide this space in a lot of different ways. So you can subdivide it in 2, so then you get 8 notes. you can have triplets, so you subdivide it in 3. You can have 4 subdivisions, so then you have 16 notes. You can have quintuplets, so then you have 5 notes. It's too late for me to do that, but you get the idea. you can do it more and more and more, and then you hear these things. At least that's what I think they mean with subdividing. I don't think they mean the pitches of the notes. That can also happen, but Max Roach, super important drummer. Played a lot with Clifford Brown as well. One of my favorites improvisers in drums. I think also played with Charlie Parker. Yeah. Fretless bass. Think of Tiago Pastorius. Think of just a lot of different electric bass players that have no frets to, because usually wait, did Tiago Pastorius even play fretless bass? Because now I'm confused. Yeah, he invented the attribution to the invention of the fretless bass guitar is given to Tiago Pastorius between 1969 and 1970. Removed the frets from his Fender Jazz electric bass. Bill Wyman of the Rolling Stones was also known for playing a homemade fretless as early as 1961. But I guess Tiago Pastorius was the more famous one as in the bass guitar to do it. I guess to imitate more the double bass sound, because of course double basses don't have frets. That would be ridiculous. I bet they wished they had frets, but no. Yeah, it's this fretless bass. I think you don't think that's true? That Tiago Pastorius invented it. I think they just attribute the invention to him, but I don't think he came up with it himself. I think you see here that there were already people doing it before him. But yeah, that's the fretless bass. It's like definitely a different sound than a normal bass guitar. And nowadays you usually see I don't. Well, I have played with some fretless bass guitar players, but it's not as common. It seems if you listen to a lot of Tiago Pastorius. But Tiago also played with frets, I'm sure. I don't necessarily associate his sound with fretless bass. Tiago Pastorius, master of the fretless bass. I don't think that's true that he invented. 1970s first fretless electric. Yeah, true. Wes recorded some stuff playing electric bass like it was a guitar. That I didn't know. I'll look it up in a second. We invented electric. Who invented the fretless electric bass? Article in Rocksmith from Ubisoft, so it's from a game. But yeah, not necessarily the most credible thing. Urban legend credits jazz bass master Jacob Astorius, but whether this statement is true or not, he certainly popularized it before fretless basses were common or commercially available. So, yeah. I don't know if you trust this necessarily, but yeah. Weston was playing Monk's electric bass here. Wes Montgomery bass, but I guess with frets then. Yeah. Yeah, I never realized, because I've listened to this. I've listened to these recordings, but I thought it was just like a really low recording or something. But yeah, this body and soul tune up. Apparently, people are not sure if it was like a 6-string bass guitar or. And he just played it, or if it was an actual 4-string bass that he was playing. Yeah, because I've always thought it just sounds like a jazz guitar with really dark sound, but I guess it is an octave lower. Oh, quite an obscure mystery. Fretless bass. Paris. This just says Paris. Paris. Jazz. Jazz mystery. Jeffrey Boyle says, peace guitar, bro. Naka and his brother Monk was the first jazz musician to transition to electric bass in jazz. I've heard about that, yeah. Really good jazz. He played with Miles Davis, didn't he? Monk Montgomery. Really good family, like the trio. Yeah, I don't know what this refers to. Paris, about jazz here. If anyone has any idea, I'll go. Art Tatum. Of course, the genius piano player, legendary chops master, can play anything, super fast, incredible sound. One of the best piano players ever. Died quite young, at 47, 46, more or less. Especially known for, the technical ability. So many stories of people walking into Art Tatum playing in a bar and just their minds being blown. It's insane jazz musician, revolutionized the jazz piano. And there's also a story of Herbie Hancock, I think, during a recording session with Miles Davis, where they have Art Tatum playing before they were recording, like while they were discussing, and he was getting super distracted. He just said, "Please don't take Art Tatum out because I cannot play anything if I keep listening to how he plays." He's very inhumane talent. And going on, hard bop, already mentioned. It's the hard bop, the bebop that's more influenced with the blues. The famous players like Horace Silver that played a lot of hard bop. It's came after bebop. Usually was more tempos were more slower. The chords were more dominant 7, sharp 9-ish. A lot of blues scales also mixed in with major sixths and this type of things. And very cool stuff. I think Hancock 25 on. Wait, what is this name? You have the epitome of the jazz meme name. Hancock 251 XD Omega Lols. I think it refers to musicians like Kenny Clarke moving and playing in Paris. Yeah, that's true. There's also here in the Netherlands, there's a famous jazz club in Leiden where Coleman Hawkins, I believe, played his last concert. There's also Dexter Gordon that played a lot around Europe. But I guess Paris, of course, is much more main hub. And also because of Django Reinhardt and those gypsy jazz was really a big thing. That hasn't been mentioned yet here in Iceberg. Rhythm changes, famous. I got rhythm tune from Gershwin that got reused a lot by bebop players, especially. Also, Lester Young has the Lester Leaps in, which is also rhythm changes. It's a chord progression that you can use. That is very good to practice. If you practice rhythm changes, you can play a lot of standards, especially if you transpose rhythm changes to other keys as well. It sounds like this. If I play the chords. You can also do a lot of reharmonizations with it. You can play a lot of different things. There's Eternal Triangle where you have a bunch. A lot of different chromatic 251s. You also have people that play coltrane changes on the rhythm changes on the A part. You have this really cool rhythm changes tune called Celia from Bud Powell. That's really cool. That starts with half diminished, actually. Well, it starts with the B flat, but then goes to the half diminished, C half diminished. So you have a minor 251 that resolves to major. Very cool variation of the rhythm changes by a player that was contemporary to Charlie Parker. So A very cool tune to check out. Also very cool melody. Celia. Yeah. Rhythm changes. The backbone of bebop, you could even say. You cannot play bebop if you cannot play rhythm changes. Dexter Gordon, super influential tenor saxophonist, lived for a period in Europe as well, played a lot in Europe, but Our Man in Paris is also a very famous album from him. At least, if I'm not confusing, it's already quite late, so I might be confusing names by now. Or, yeah, Our Man in Paris. Really cool album. If you want to play ballads, you have to learn from Dexter Gordon. He plays ballads. He's the master of playing ballads. And he has this wonderful quote about how to play ballads. How to play ballads. Dexter Gordon. Well, it doesn't. I cannot find it right now, but it's basically that he would learn all the lyrics. He would. He cannot play a tune. The story was that someone asked to play a tune from the band, like, "Hey, maybe we can play this tune." And he said, "No, man, I cannot play it because I don't know the lyrics to the tune." Even though he doesn't necessarily sing, he's a saxophone player. But it tells you a lot about the phrasing and these things. However, of course, these jazz stories are all jazz stories, and who knows, how true this is or not. But it is. I can imagine that at least he has a decent idea of how a singer would play this a ballad, for example. So very cool saxophone player, also very Latin influenced. Very cool Latin stuff. It's kind of like, Sonny Rollins, Dexter Gordon. Of course, there are different players, but Dexter Gordon, like laid back type of stuff, laid back timing, master. Real book. It's the Bible of jazz, the Forbidden Bible. There's a lot of stories about the real book. I've never had an actual real book. Never bought it. Real book. What is meant by real book? The physical book which has paper pages instead of moving. Oh, this is something else. What do you mean by a real book? The real books can be held in the hands. Oh, come on. The jazz real book. Come on. You think I actually want to read a book? I want to read a real book. So who wrote it, actually? The official history of the real book. It's the go-to resource for jazz musicians, even though there are so many mistakes or things that are from a specific version, for example, Miles Davis. And as I said before, there's a lot of 2/5 ones that have been put here on these tunes without that much consideration for the original necessarily, more for improvisation-focused harmonies. So it's good to be aware of what the real book is for and what's its purpose and how to memorize the tunes by yourself from a version so that you don't get too attached to the idea of a real book. I haven't used the real book in a long time. I do use the iReal Pro app for the changes of tunes, for example. And then you can edit yourself the changes if you are thinking more of a specific version, or if you know the song, or if you hear the song and see that they're playing different changes here. And then you can figure out and edit it on the app on a book, it's written there. So then you have to scratch out. It's more, you cannot change versions that easy, or and you have what you have there. And in an app, at least you can add things, you can delete things, you can make, it's just much more handy. Bill Clinton refers, of course, to the famous video of Bill Clinton playing saxophone live on TV. Unfortunately, I don't have desktop audio, I think, still. So for some reason, it's not picking up videos when I play it here, unfortunately. But man, there's a very interesting version of him playing the blues. And also jazz, but there's even transcriptions of what he plays, and it's quite funny. Yeah, Bill Clinton, the epitome of a saxophone player. Very cool. My favorite things: legendary recording, legendary tune, especially for John Coltrane, who became really famous when he made his version of My Favorite Things. But originally it was typical jazz waltz, standard from a musical, from the Sound of Music, something like that. That's it. My Favorite Things. You can also refer to the album that's also called My Favorite Things from Coltrane. Some really cool tunes, also some more obscure tunes. You have this new album, well, new relatively, where you have these Coltrane reharmonizations. I don't remember how it's called. Yeah, Coltrane's Sounds, it's called, this album. And if I look up information about Coltrane's Sounds CD, you see, probably, if I'm not mistaken, it's recorded together at the same time as My Favorite Things. Yeah, it was recorded at Atlantic Studios during the sessions for My Favorite Things. After Coltrane had stopped recording for the label. And at the same time where we recorded My Favorite Things, he would also record like this 26-2. He also recorded Body and Soul, that famous version. A lot of things like Liberia, Central Park West, Satellite, Coltrane changes. So he was still experimenting. Even though on the album itself, My Favorite Things, which tunes were on there again? Yeah, so it has My Favorite Things, Every Time We Say Goodbye, Summertime, But Not For Me. And But Not For Me has some Coltrane changes. Summertime, also cooler version, 11 minutes long. Yeah, I love Coltrane. Buddy Rich tapes, those are the famous tapes of Buddy Rich going down on his band because they were not good enough or because they didn't play as good as he wanted. It's there's a lot to find about it on YouTube and everything. It's a lot of fun to see Buddy Rich getting angry, and not so fun for the bands, unfortunately. You can find them on YouTube. Space. What could it be? Any guesses? Jazz space? Space music? Space Marine. Space jazz. Space jazz. Apparently it's a genre by the guy who wrote the Scientology. Ron Hubbard. That's the guy who invented Scientology. He made an album called Space Jazz, apparently. Oh, it's an album soundtrack companion to the novel Battlefield Earth by L. Ron Hubbard. He composed the music for the album. It's very interesting. I'm not sure if that was what was the reference in the iceberg, but very cool. Space jazz. If it's as good as Scientology is, then you should check it out. Blue Note Records, the famous Blue Note label that made the most influential jazz albums ever, that still exists today, the Blue Note label. You also have the Blue Note clubs around the world where you have really the best jazz artists that come by. Blue Note, based off the blues scale, Blue Note, that's where I guess the name Blue Note comes from. You have music education about college, conservatory, about how the music education, how it works, how what it's like to be in a conservatory and what happens afterwards. Yeah, it's very important, especially nowadays with internet and everything. Music education is becoming more and more a place of networking and meeting people and making connections and learning with in practical sense more than really learning about music theory. I think most people nowadays that go to the conservatory know more than people used to finish the conservatory like 30 years ago. With internet, you can learn a lot by yourself, but especially with a teacher there and with really inspiring people around you, then really pushes you to the next level. Kenny G Sucks. That's about a critique from Kenny G up here, from famous smooth jazz sax player that Pat Metheny completely made fun of, said that it's terrible, music is terrible. Yeah, and nowadays is a meme that Kenny G sucks. You can hear also a lot of memes about Kenny G here on YouTube. And jazz standards, the famous jazz tunes that everyone plays, that people make their own versions of, that people make. You have this Broadway type of music. You have this these tunes like My Favorite Things is a jazz standard, and then comes a musician like Coltrane who's super influential, makes a crazy version of a really cool version of the standard, or Miles Davis, or Frank Sinatra. And then people listen to it a lot and they make their own versions, their own interpretations. Jazz standards you can see as a template for an artist's identity. It's like a common factor that jazz artists have. So they play the same standards, and from there you see their identity by the differences. Like Coltrane's Summertime is so different than Frank Sinatra's Summertime. And with that, we finish the second layer of this iceberg with Coltrane. And we can go deeper even to the depths in here. There's a lot still to go through, and it's best, I believe, to keep it for next time to start on this part, on this third layer, so that it would be nice if I could also play some videos while doing this, because then we can also listen to these things like Kenny G sucks, of like listening to Pat Metheny saying that Kenny G sucks, and these things is always fun to hear, or to hear like how a musician plays or these things. Stan Getz theory knowledge is the first one, so I'm already excited to see what's going to be. The third tire, things are going to get really dark, really mysterious. You see some very obscure references here and there to things that I also don't know a lot about, so then we'll find about it together. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the iceberg for now. And next time we'll finish it up. We still have the third layer here. We did the first one was Louis Armstrong. Then we go to the second one, Coltrane. And now, next time we'll go deeper. We'll have the Cotton Club. Cotton Club. I wonder what that's about, what that references. What could be the mystery there? And then deeper on the fourth layer, complete darkness here already. You see, like the third layer still have a little bit of the iceberg. Here you're completely dark. You see Charlie Parker, demonic Charlie Parker. Some crazy Miles Davis played by Charlie Parker practice tape. Some cool things to look to. And the last one, Miles Davis Tutu cover. And yeah, some less references, but very obscure, I'm sure. Yeah. Right. Looking forward to it. I think we had a lot of people we had a lot of talk among each other. It's very good. It's always good to talk, always good to interact, to make it so that I'm not just telling you what it is, but like if you guys always have any questions, you can always ask me, or I ask you about things. I also learned about the Club de Esquina here. That's not an actual club. Always good to know if you want to visit Brazil. Yeah, that's it. I hope for next time I'll also figure out the audio so that the desktop audio stays on. Otherwise, it would be a shame if we cannot get it to work. Yeah. The Jazz Iceberg. If you guys also have another tips for maybe cool things to do next time, feel free to drop it in the comments or these things. It's always welcome. The Portuguese guitar is still here that we talked about before. Yeah, and I'll see you guys, I guess, next week. See you later.